We get a chance to talk to Dan Moriarty, welcoming him in from Southern California. How are you, Dan? Good to see your face, man.
Hey, Darren. It's good to be seen by you. It's been a while, and I love the summertime when Rod goes away on a needed vacation, and you jump in, and Clark texts me and says, "You got some time?" I said, "It's the summertime. It's August. Let's talk some hockey. Yeah, I'm always here for you guys." Thank you.
Good.
This is really cool.
Fill me in. What's the latest? Because we're overdue for a catch-up.
I got to say, this one thing you just said as you were going to break, which was awesome, as far as hockey memories. And we've discussed my memories in the past, but the one that you brought up, 2002 Olympics, Salt Lake. I was there for 3 weeks. I was in that arena doing interviews, pre, post, between periods with fans, parents, players, etc. And it was it was so amazing and spine-tingling to be there, because I go back as an American. And, of course, we know who won the gold. It wasn't us. And Daniel Craig, the guy who takes care of the ice all the time, Mr. Iceman himself, when it was over, you may recall this story, and some of your fans may recall it. Maybe they don't. When it was over, when they took the ice out, we were there at the end, he showed me, center ice, the Canadian loonie under the face-off dot that he put there when they laid the ice for good luck for the Canadian team. Obviously, it worked, Daniel Craig, and it was cool for me to see that post gold medal, post ceremonies, and to say that was kind of cool for the fellow Canadian to do that for his guys. Now, of course, that team was loaded, and they should have won the gold medal, and I'm glad they did. One sidebar that was hilarious for me was Gretzky, and he's there with the team, and of course his dad Walter is there in the stands. And I said to you before, I was doing interviews, finding anybody, Darren, that I could possibly find to interview, because I had to do between every period, post-game, pre-game, for everything for 3 weeks. So we're finding anybody we can, and I find Walter. I said, "Walter, can I put you on the big screen?" Sure. I put him on 2 or 3 times. Later on in the tournament, I see Wayne down below. He says, "Dan, stop. You're making my father too famous. He's getting a big head, and I'm getting sick of it. Okay, Dan? Just stop." It's like, okay, Wayne, your dad's done. Even though Walter was a fabulous interview, Mr. Hockey, Mr. Dad himself. And, of course, Wayne Gretzky.
Oh, that's cool.
So I had to say that, Darren, because you brought it up when you went to break. That was probably one of my most fondest memories as well, as far as being around hockey.
Yeah. And, I'm an 87 born. My first memory of, I watched the game, but my first, that I can, close my eyes and picture is the 94 playoffs. Adam Graves, I believe, on that wraparound on Marty Brodeur, win that game. I remember at my Nana's living room watching. That's my first memory of hockey, watching it. So these were all my heroes. Gretzky playing. I didn't really get to watch him play in his prime. I saw him in St. Louis, and I saw him in New York, But these were all my hockey heroes, led by Mario and, those guys up front, Paul Kariya and Eric Lindros and Joe Sakic and Steve Yzerman. The list goes on and on. Patrick Waugh didn't even want to play in the Olympics, or he might have been the starting.
Right. And it's you bring up those guys in that time. Now, I just said to your audience, as I am an American, and we did lose that 2002 gold medal. However, you talked about 94 and Adam Graves. 96, the World Cup, when Team USA again beat that all-star.
I don't have any memory of that.
Canada. I gotta give one positive to my country. Come on, something.
So for me, those were my hockey heroes, and you said it was a great fun memory. Is that it for you, or what's when you think of the best that hockey's been in your life, what do you go back to?
It's very simple. My childhood, as you did with yours, and I was born in '60. So I've got a few years under the belt on you. And when I was a little kid growing up in Massachusetts, I had 3 stars. One was Bobby Orr. Obviously, I'm in Massachusetts. But 2 other guys played for the Montreal Canadiens because they were the Flying Frenchmen. And I loved the way they played hockey. I loved the way they skated. I was a small guy. All I could do in hockey was skate. I didn't have the hands. So I loved Yvon Cornwallier. And to this day, number 12, the Roadrunner, is fantastic. However, one more thing, Darren, which is hilarious to me. I wore number 4 growing up, not because of Bobby Orr, but because of Jean Beliveau. And I just thought he was the most amazing, elegant, wonderful hockey player. And then fast forward so many years, I had a chance to play hockey with and against and meet Bobby Orr. That you don't get better than that. But I also, for the Pioneers series I did that's still on the NHL Network, I interviewed Jean Beliveau. And when you do what we do for a living, most people don't make you nervous anymore. They're part of your job. However, I was in awe sitting in Montreal with Mr. Beliveau because of what he meant to my childhood, and it's one of my fondest memories. And when I was a little kid, we'd go up there for weekends. We'd go to Montreal to play hockey for the weekend, as maybe you did up in your neck of the woods growing up, and then they would come back down to Massachusetts to play us. And when I was there, one of the gentlemen I was staying with his son and his family worked for the Canadiens, so he brought us to a Canadiens practice, and I got to see them out skating, Dryden in net,
Cool.
Cornway flying around, and I have that memory, and that was in the old Forum. So when I was a little kid, maybe 8, 9 years old or something. So that was pretty amazing. So when I think of my favorite players, I do think of Jean Beliveau. I think of Bobby Orr, and then I'm going to fast forward to my days working with the NHL, and there's no one better. People can debate who was the best player of their era, and Gretzky obviously is always number one, or they say Gordie Howe, whatever. But the biggest, the most genuinely people that I have had a chance to work with were Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe, and these are Mount Rushmore of hockey players, and they were the nicest men that I had to deal with, interview, and get to know. So it's really, I'm biased as you are. It's an amazing sport. Our greatest players are also our greatest ambassadors, and it's really wonderful. It's Darren. Yeah. I feel so happy and honored to be around this sport.
I know. And you talk about how great they are as ambassadors, and something I wanted to ask you about being in the United States is you get to watch Wayne on TV all the time now, with his time on TNT. And Mark Messier is on ESPN. How good has this new TV deal been for the game?
For a fan like me, it's been fantastic. And for people that are friends of mine who aren't hockey people but know I am, they're watching ESPN. They're watching TNT because it's so much. The Biz is hilarious. The people don't know who he's a fourth line guy who hung on to an NHL career.
And Wayne reminds him of that too, right?
Every single day. And when Lundqvist gets on, I was like, dude, you got to stop pulling out all these gorgeous suits. You look too good already. Are you really a hockey player or a high fashion model? TNT is fantastic. Anson Carter's fantastic. They're all great. Wayne is great because, again, he's the ambassador and he's so well spoken. And when Wayne breaks things down, it even sounds different to a guy like Anson Carter or Lundqvist or a Biz Nasty who played in the NHL. It sounds different to them even, and he sees things that they don't see. Then when we switch to ESPN, again, friends of mine who aren't hockey people, they say, that Mark Messier gets better every single game. I was like, well, yeah, he's a consummate professional, and he is getting better because he is amazing. He is so well studied. And you can see with his hockey career, Darren, what he did. I remember one time he was talking about being 15 or something years old or 14 years old and asking his dad, he was little, he said. He wasn't the big man he became. He said, hey, Dad, am I as good as Gretzky? And his dad changed the subject because it's like, no, you're not. And then they become teammates and friends. And then, of course, what Messier did, becoming, in my opinion, one of the greatest captains ever, if not the best ever of all time. He's the best in my time. Because I didn't know the guys before, and I know the guys now, which of course brings me to Auston Matthews. But the whole
you can go there. That's where I want to go next.
Well, it's and I just said this. It's interesting to me because I'm one of those guys, Darren, that always thinks that I don't think your best player has to be your captain. I just never felt that way, and there are certain best players who should be captains, like Sidney Crosby, and probably Connor Bedard in a few years when he'll grow into it. And Connor McDavid belongs as the captain. However, I don't think you have to have your best player always as your captain. Messier became the best player and became that captain. He wasn't always that leader, but he grew into it, and he also grew into being a better hockey player. I look across the NHL, Jordan Staal. I think he's one of the best captains in the NHL, and he's a third liner killing penalties for the Canes. I look at Jamie Benn. At his age, not one of the best players, but he gives out, extends his style of play, but not one of the best players. Even Mark Stone in Vegas, I don't believe is one of their. He's one of the best players, but not the best player. So I've always been interested about, should the best player always be the captain? I'm interested to see how Auston Matthews does, because he is the best player and he's the best goal scorer in the NHL right now. And has he matured into this and ready for it? The nice thing is that Tavares is on board with it and is walking him into it. He's worn the A for a while, so now he's ready for the C. And they were on the same team, saying, not the same team, Maple Leafs, but the same team. Okay, now it's your turn. And I hope it works. It's just interesting as an American looking at the Toronto landscape all the time and seeing how things do and don't pan out for that organization. It's interesting to me. In fact, part of it is that, Marner, who's always the guy being talked about, who's been wearing the A, well, will they take the A away from him now? And have the C on Matthews, the A on Tavares, the A on Riley. I mean, is Marner all of a sudden have no letter? That's interesting. And then when they keep on losing in the first round to the Boston Bruins, sorry, I am from Massachusetts.
That's true.
Sorry. What is the next step for that organization as far as with Marner and him saying, and he's right, because I was in Toronto countless times when I was doing my NHL stuff. They are gods, whether they win or not. They are gods in Toronto. Now, that's always been the discrepancy. What players can handle it? What players can't? What players don't? What players do? Who wants to embrace it? Who doesn't want to embrace it? And that's always been my thing. Maybe Matthews is the right choice because he's there, he's the captain, and he's an American. Maybe it'll work differently. Maybe the psyche's different for an American kid from Arizona as opposed to a Canadian kid from Toronto or from Vancouver or from Montreal or from any place across the entire country playing in Toronto. The heartbeat.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how it goes, but they did it the right way. They had the ceremony, the passing of the torch, which is a lot different than it was after Dion Phaneuf left or, when they've had a little bit of a break between captains. Now, lastly, before we go, how much this offer sheet situation has really woken up the NHL. St. Louis signing a pair of Edmonton Oilers to contracts, and Elliot Friedman was talking about on his podcast last night when I was listening about some of the potential reasons why this might have happened. Peter Chiarelli is in that organization in St. Louis, and likely doesn't feel very good about the Edmonton Oilers. And
you think
Stan Bowman being the new general manager in Edmonton, he's got a rivalry with Doug Armstrong going back to the St. Louis, Chicago days. So there's a little bit of that. We remember Brian Burke and Kevin Lowe and the spats they had in the media over the Dustin Penner offer sheet. How much of this bad blood exists in the league?
I think hockey players are always hockey players. And all the men you mentioned are hockey lifers. And so they don't forget what's been done to them in the past. You and I know when you're playing on a hockey team, even if you don't like your teammate, you've got his back or you've got her back. However, in management, there's no more getting at someone's back. It's getting back at someone perhaps down the road when you have a chance to. As you just said, they've all been crossing paths in their former jobs. My thing is this to Edmonton, not knowing the workings of what Stan's going to do, what Bowen's going to do as far as the money they have up there and what they don't have, the Draisaitl contract and everything else they've got to keep going forward with. They made it to the finals last year. They have to make some changes to win it this year or in the next few years. They have the team top to bottom. It's always, do you have the third and fourth line guys because you have your stars? I think what they should do to help themselves is go out and get the capologist from the Vegas Golden Knights. Once you have that person who's been doing that jump rope for the longest time, then you'll figure out how to go forward. And before the break, I was listening to you, and you said Dylan Holloway, I'd get him. I agree with you. Dylan Holloway is that role player that I would get. I don't think Broberg is worth the 4-point whatever they were going to say about that. I think perhaps you're correct. Holloway can fit in. Broberg too much, and that may be the way you have to go with this. Again, I go back to how do you fill the cupboards as far as top to bottom. with the players you have, the contracts you need to keep in place, and what is the capologist going to do in Edmonton? Because I don't know that world. You may know more about it than I do as far as the money, but I remember watching distinctly, of course, the 7 games, and Holloway, to me, both Holloway and Broberg stood out as role players, but Holloway more so. And I think what you said, the number 2.29 or something like that, I thought, okay, that hopefully can fit. It's more than they planned on paying him, but it can fit closer to what the Philip Broberg offer was. I think you said 4 point something for 4 years.
Yeah.
Or 3 years. Yeah.
2 years, 4.58. Yeah. 250% more than what he was asking for.
Thank you. That's quite steep. And, you keep on reading it. You talked about Dustin Penner and the ones that have worked out and the ones that haven't worked out. And Dustin Penner is one of those ones that, and I know Dustin. I knew Dustin pretty well back in the day when I was here working with the LA Kings and the NHL. He's a great guy. He's an awesome guy. He's a great guy in the locker room. But boy, he was getting $5 million a year back in those days, and that was a lot of money for a guy who won the cup. But did he really win the cup? He was one of the role players in Anaheim that year. So, hey, good for him. He got his money. But that really teed off Berkey. That was obvious.
That was lots of fun. Look, this has gone way too fast, but we're out of time, Dan. Good to see you, and let's stay in touch.
Pleasure. Always good seeing you, Darren. Great job. Love it. Thank you for having me. Clark Monroe, thank you, sir. Talk to you guys soon.
How about that?
Dan Moriarty joining us from his home in Southern California. Great stuff there.